Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to section 3 of your Health and Safety Level 1 and CSCS course. This section is health and welfare, very important section in the CSCS industry because there's many new things on the CSCS to talk about within this section. So we're going to start off with the cleanliness of workplaces and particularly sites. So let's have a little look at how we start off. Hand washing. Does anybody know what is legally required on site to wash your hands? Now, you may be thinking, because of the new situation with regards to various diseases and viruses that are going around all the different countries in the world, that we have to have sanitizing gels and so on and so forth. But the legal requirement is only hot and cold running water, soap, and a way to dry your hands, not towels. Towels can spread germs, so therefore hand dryers, paper towels that can be thrown away, so on and so forth. Okay. So let's just clarify that. For washing your hands in the UK, the legal requirement is hot and cold running water, soap, and a way to dry your hands. I'm just going to ask you a question about toilets. Do you think that toilets, the same toilet, can be used by men and women? Now, I'm guessing a majority of you will say, no, they can't. But the actual answer is, yes, they can. What I didn't say was, can they be used by men and women at the same time? The CSCS test and other tests in this sort of section will ask, in what situation can men and women use the same toilets? And the words you're looking for is, as long as they are lockable for use by one person at a time, both toilets and showers on site, which many sites do have now, can be used by men and women. So they are unisex toilets and unisex showers. Okay, the canteen on site. What do you think is the legal requirements in a canteen? And the first thing I'm going to say to you is that sites don't have to provide hot food and they don't have to provide fridges, believe it or not. The legal requirements for the canteen is that they must be a covered over area. It must be warm and dry. They must have tables and chairs for you to sit at. And the most important, there must be a way to heat water and food. So most of you who know about sites and know about construction sites, there will be microwaves and kettles, or toasters and microwaves and kettles, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's going through what we should have, but as part of what I'm going to say, welfare facilities. So if you want to jot that term down, that is your welfare facilities. Other sites will have things like drying rooms and cleaning rooms and so on and so forth, but there we go, that's your welfare facilities. I'm going to ask you, how do we keep wounds covered on site? Because we are talking about cleanliness and diseases. Obviously, you'd go to the first aider, and we will sort of cover that in the first aid section. But how do we keep wounds covered? The standard things are plasters, bandages, and of course, which are more prevalent now, gloves. Gloves, very, very important. Okay, use of barrier cream with gloves then. So how many of you have used barrier cream in the past? What is barrier cream? So if I can just explain, barrier cream is a cream that is put on before we start work. That's a good thing to jot down because it's in both tests. So barrier cream is used before you start work. It is exactly what it says it is, a barrier. But the thing with most creams is that they can be washed off very easily by most substances. So you may think, well, what is the point? The point is, barrier cream should only be used with gloves. Now, there are many, many people who I teach this to in the construction industry who think that the barrier cream was just doing the job. But things like cement can go straight through and still cause cement burns. Okay, so the barrier cream goes on your hands. You're then supposed to put a pair of gloves on. If you then spill something onto your hands, it will soak into the glove or be repelled by the glove. The barrier cream underneath will give you the time to take the glove off, discard it, wash your hands, re-barrier cream, new gloves on. Okay, so just to clarify, barrier cream should be done before you start work every time, if it's different tasks, and should be used with gloves. Waste food products. Why do we have bins on site? So obviously, we talked about good housekeeping earlier on and keeping the site clean and tidy. But when we're talking about diseases and cleanliness, we're now talking about what can cause diseases. And if we have waste food products lying around on site, what can we get? The obvious thing are rats. There are two animals that are classed as vermin on the CSES test. They are rats and pigeons. We will go on to diseases in a second, but before we flick onto diseases, I will tell you that pigeons transmit a disease by their drop-ins. Once the drop-ins are dried and they are blown into the air via some sort of dust and inhaled, it can cause a disease very much like a lung cancer. So pigeon drop-ins are extremely dangerous. And there are questions on the CSES, if you find pigeons where you are working, what you should do, absolutely stop work, as we mentioned in section 1, stop what you're doing and report. Do not get involved. Okay, so bins will keep, obviously, rats and pigeons at bay. We're not concerned about foxes and other vermins at the moment. On the CSES, we're just concerned about the vermin being rats and pigeons. Okay, let's go into the diseases and have a little look. So, the disease carried by rats and in their urine is called Weil's disease. The technical term is leptospirosis. Sounds a bit like a Harry Potter spell, and if you just want to remember it like that, it's the spell that turns people into rats. So to remember leptospirosis is a very, very good way to think, it sounds like a spell. Weil's disease or Weil's disease or Weil's disease, depending on where you are in the world and how it's called, comes from rat's urine. It's spread by a rat's tail. So when a rat walks, it urinates, the tail spreads it around the place, and therefore it can get into your body. Now, how does it get into your body? This is the crucial part about Weil's disease. It's not through cuts. So many people think swimming in the rivers, it goes in via cuts. It doesn't. It's ingested. So your hands have to put it into your mouth, in your eyes, nose, whatever it may be. But it's actually ingested into your system, eyes, nose, and mouth. It's extremely dangerous. If it's not caught early, it can kill you. Okay, it can kill you. So, Weil's disease from rats comes from the rat's urine, can cause leptospirosis or the Weil's disease itself, and can be extremely dangerous. You can die within about 3 weeks. Okay, I'll just move on. Tetanus. We've all heard of tetanus, the injection we have in our arm, but what is tetanus? Tetanus is a disease that can be caused by bacteria, dirt, going into an open cut on your skin. Yeah, this is why we have the tetanus jab if perhaps we have cut ourselves on a rusty nail or been bitten by a dog. But I always say to my students on courses, it doesn't matter whether the nail is rusty or clean, it's the fact your skin has been broken. It doesn't matter if it's a dog that spit you or a cat that spit you, it's the fact your skin has been broken. Because your skin is the number one barrier for keeping things from your bloodstream. Okay? So tetanus, the old name for tetanus is lockjaw. The symptoms of tetanus is that your joints will start to ache, and the last joint to ache is your jaw locking shut. In the olden days, people did also die of tetanus. I will jump back a second while we're talking about symptoms, because the symptoms of Weil's disease, and this is what makes it extremely dangerous, is they are flu-like symptoms. So many of us think we've got flu, not realizing that we've worked on a construction site, we've handled bricks, blocks, materials that maybe had rats in them the night before, who were searching for food because our site is not clean and tidy and healthy, and therefore we've contracted Weil's disease. We have flu-like symptoms, we go to the doctor. Please, 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 if you feel like that, go to the doctor and tell them you work on a construction site, and they should do the test for you. Okay, let's move on. Dermatitis, a common thing in life. The number one industry for dermatitis is actually the hairdressing and beauty industry. Because of the amount of chemicals used and how harsh they can be to the skin, bleaches, dyes, and so on and so forth, dermatitis is prevalent in that industry. But of course, in construction, we're also using many, many different chemicals. The number one chemical to cause dermatitis on a construction site is cement. Mixing wet cement, as soon as it gets on your skin, it's starting to damage. And eventually, if it only causes dermatitis, you've been lucky, because cement can actually burn the skin and cause severe burns. Okay. Asthma. Now, you may think that I've got asthma, I've got normal asthma, so on and so forth. But this is what we call occupational asthma. So all of these diseases are occupational diseases. They're caused by the workplace, i.e. you wouldn't have had them if you weren't doing the job you were doing. Okay? So these are occupational diseases. Asthma is mainly caused by dust and chemicals being breathed in. Occupational asthma, the number one cause of that in the construction industry is the dust called silica. Now, I will tell you about silica. So if you can jot silica down, it's spelled on the bottom there, S-I-L-I-C-A, silica. Silica causes silicosis. In history, the people who suffered with silicosis the most, especially where we live in the UK, were miners. Miners had silicosis from breathing in the dust from coal. Where does silica come from? Silica is a natural mineral in most rocks and in the ground. So once we start breaking things up that are hard and contain rock-like materials, we are releasing silica dust. So those of you who might go and work in the railway industry, when ballast is made and dropped onto the track, that creates silica dust. When we cut breeze blocks, silica dust. When we chisel walls out, silica dust. Using pneumatic drills, disc cutting, cutting plasterboards, scraping things down. Anything that creates dust from a dry product is usually silica dust. Now I say usually because wood doesn't contain silica. Wood eventually rots, so therefore wood is just sawdust. Can be dangerous, especially if it's MDF, but we're not talking about MDF dust, we're talking about silica. Okay, so where does silica come from? If you want to jot this down, it's most stone and concrete products, dry things. What are most things made out of in the construction industry? Exactly that. Once the steel has gone up, everything else is usually a dry product which repels water. Now, this brings me to what silica can do and how it causes silicosis. Silica is a product, and you may have seen it when you bought a new pair of trainers and had a little silica gel in the box. That silica gel is keeping those trainers as dry as possible. They were manufactured in China. They've arrived on a boat. They've been in a shipping container. They've been on a dockyard. They've been in another lorry. They've sat in a warehouse. But not even the box is damp. The box isn't damp because of the silica gel inside repelling water. Now, silica repels or absorbs water depending on how it's manufactured in the process. Your bodies are, I'm just going to pluck a figure, around 85% water-based. If you then breathe something in which wants to either repel or suck up water into your lungs, the natural thing that will happen is it will start to dry out the inside of your lungs, starting with a cough and then developing into an asthma and then developing further into bronchitis and so on and so forth until you end up with silicosis, which is a very, very debilitating disease. So there's a quick explanation of silica. Comes from stone and concrete dust, doesn't come from glass, doesn't come from plastic, doesn't come from wood, comes from the hard products that we use in the construction industry. Mixing cement, bags of plaster, things that dry out. They dry out because they have silica in them. Fantastic. Now the last disease I'm going to mention, which isn't on here, which has recently come into the CSCS, is hepatitis. Hepatitis is a blood-borne disease. Now, astonishingly, and it is the world we live in, unfortunately, there are many, many people coming across situations where they find discarded needles from drug use and so on and so forth inside buildings. Housing association workers, when they repair baths, they take bath panels off and they find needles behind. The first thing I will say to you is if you do come across anything like that, please, again, we're going to go back to the first thing that I taught you. Stop what you're doing. Do not touch and report to a supervisor. Even if you've had things like sharps training and so on and so forth, you're going to want the correct equipment or you're going to want to call in specialists to get rid of it. So a hepatitis, there are many variants of hepatitis, blood-borne disease, extremely dangerous, can be life-threatening, usually comes from needles. And the reason I'm saying this is in part of tests that I've seen online and mock tests and so on and so forth, it shows a picture of varying things, broken bottles, this, that and the other, and the thing that you want to click on to ask where does hepatitis is the needles. So just make a little mental note that hepatitis comes from needles. That's the end of section 3. Look forward to all in seeing you in section 4, which is manual handling. Thank you very much.